Yeah, I wanted to really like build on the vibration of money, or the concept of money being, having its own vibration, or its own will, if you will, or its own potential for access to our reality of its own, by its own volition, or by its own compulsion, or by its own will, of course, right? So, one of the things I wanted to share is that I wanted to start with just, and we can, like I said, we could build on it collectively, but you know, there's a scripture where it speaks about the love of money being the root of all evil, and a lot of people, they take that particular, phrase or passage, and you hear a lot of times money is the root of all evil, which of course is incorrect if you're basing it off of what was said there. But money itself is a representation of something. That's all, right? Let's just get right on into it. We don't need to tiptoe around it. But money is a representation of abundance, and it's a representation of accessibility, right? So money itself, the concept, whatever that money is, right? So I'm not speaking about different forms of currency. Currency is something different than money, right? But money itself, it represents, abundance in unlimited amounts, right? Because how much money is there? Well, there's as much money as there possibly could be, as much as I could imagine. There's probably more money on the planet than I could ever count in my lifetime. That's how much money there is. So money within itself represents that concept of infinite abundance, but also accessibility, right? Money makes stuff better. But money, it gives us access to certain realities and to certain situations. And, a lot of times we have an unpleasant perspective, or unpleasant vision and concept of money that we hold within ourselves, because maybe we just haven't developed a healthy relationship with the concept of what money is, or for a lot of people, they've never really learned about finances and money and things like that. So they then take different kinds of religious teachings, they twist them in order to compensate for what it is that they haven't decided to learn. So like when they read things like, it's harder for a rich man, to enter the kingdom of heaven, than a camel to go through an eye of a needle, right? They say, oh wow, so if I have money, then it will be hard for me to ascend to this other dimension that we call heaven, this unseen dimension of pure creativity that is called heaven. And that's not necessarily what's being said there. What's being said there is that there is a fundamental belief that's held in the mind of certain people who have wealth that will make it difficult for them to enter into what we call the kingdom, right? And of course, the kingdom is a dimension of consciousness. When we look at the concept of a kingdom, right, or the king's dominion, or the king's dominion, we're speaking about a dimension of consciousness where we can tap into the fullness of abundance and the fullness of eternity. So if this is something that Yahweh Shai advocated, then we know that Yahweh Shai never advocated poverty in that sense, but only spoke about the dangers of riches and the effect that it may, more so the effect that it may have on the mind, right? Or the brain, rather, which is a better way for me to actually say that, because riches don't really affect the mind, really, but more so the brain, right? So let's get into the mind for a second. So we're speaking the same language, and we can go from there. Everything in our corporeal reality is an experience that comes from thought. So it's really everything that you're experiencing, your reality, is a form of thought, or what we call a thought form. And those thought forms are given substantiation, or given substance, or made to be real, if you will, like we could touch them and whatnot, by the feelings that we hold in our mind, right? And so the reality that you're experiencing is not just a result of what you're thinking, but it's a result of long held feelings that are in your mind. That's why when we seek to manifest something, we have to focus on it for an extended period of time. You know, of course, in cartoons and movies and things, someone will say such and such appear, and boom, you know, it's right there. But that's because, you know, a movie is for a limited amount of time, and you know they can't have you sitting there at the screen looking at somebody focused for 20 years, you know, until a pyramid manifests in the sand. So the things that come across or come forth into action, you know, are a result of the feelings that we hold in our mind. And to be clear, when you hear me differentiate between mind and brain and things like that, the mind is just a space-time location, right? The mind is just a space-time location. So the mind is you know, similar to a planet. Like how we have the planet here. The planet holds space, like we have space that we can measure here. And then we also have the movement of time, right? The mind is the same thing, but the difference is the mind is that for thoughts. The mind is that for images. The mind is that for feelings, you know, and for ideas and even for action. So in order for those different realities to exist, images, thoughts, feelings, you know, active forces, your different ideas or your concepts, which are the coming together of your thoughts, right? So when the thoughts congeal or the thoughts bind into one particular thing, then they become a concept or they become an idea. In order for all of those to exist, there has to be this place that we call the mind. Okay, it's a location. So space or your mind, right? Because you think about it, even when you oftentimes think about space, you can only really conceptualize it in your mind by creating different points within your mind. Like if I say, okay, we have planets above us and beneath us and to the left of us and to the right of us, and there are landmass. And there are bodies of water, and there are people here and there and there and there. You can't see all of it at one time. So the only way that you could really conceptualize it is by establishing infinite points within your mind. And and those infinite points now create like a mind map. Okay, this is there, that's there, that's there, that's there. So it's a space where you're creating these 0 points. So mind is space. Space is mind. Mind is space. Space is mind. And each point that you're creating, or each 0 point, is what actually makes up the mind, right? So space is made up by fields of energy within the mind, and the mind contains the fields of energy, right? Sounds a little weird, right? So the thing that makes it is the thing that it is at the same time. So you have these infinite points, what we could call 0 points, and they're emitting these torrents of electromagnetic fields of energy and information, similar to like if I took a pebble and I throw it into water, it's going to create this torrent or this wave around it, and it's going to emit energy and information at the same time, because I can read those waves to learn something about the force of what I threw in there, so forth and so on, right? So, so you have this torrent of energy, right? And these fields kind of, or not kind of, but exist within the brain, right? Or the mind, excuse me. And now what happens is your body receives the energy and that information that's coming from that mind space, and it sends it into the brain. And then what happens is the brain then creates a hologram inside of the mind, right? And that hologram is what we call It Is Louder. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, y'all, for letting me know that it's louder. Cool. I hope it's loud enough, but if it, you know, what can I do? Other than speak louder, I don't really want to speak too loud. This is already pretty loud for me. So loud and clear. Okay, thank you. So yeah, so what happens now is your body receives that energy, sends it over to the brain. The brain then creates a hologram, right? And that hologram is what we call our life. Is what we call our life experience, right? It's really just a three-dimensional hologram. Three dimension, it just has length, it has width, it has depth, right? So if we see something that has length and width and depth, we consider it to be real, right? If we see something that just has length and width, we'll say, oh, it's just something just written on a piece of paper or, whatever. It's not actually real. So the mind sends that energy into the brain, and the holographic images now create what we call our reality, right? Or our physical reality. And there's 0 points all over us. Now, we're still talking about the vibration of money, right? So some of you may just be coming into the room, but we started with money. We're going to come back around to money. Don't worry. But I'm just really hitting into the terms. And again, as always, anyone who wants to add on to the cipher, feel free, right? And let me add on something. Adding on to the cipher doesn't mean peppering me for a bunch of questions either. So just keep that in mind. Adding on means adding on. You know what I mean? Don't turn it into a Q&A. But all right, cool. So I see Zach. I just brought you in. He had his hand up. All right, cool. So yeah, so that's what we have in terms of the mind, right? And then we have 0 points all around us. Like I said, even within the heart, there's a metaphysical 0 point that connects us to our will or to our purpose or what we would say to the source of our soul, right? So just off of now understanding how physical reality comes into being based on what I just said, is really more like it comes into doing. We know that money, like all other energies or substances that emit from the mind, are nothing but a hologram that's inside of our brain. So it's a thought form that's given substantiation by feelings, right? Because again, I'll reiterate for those coming in late, in order for something to manifest into our reality, it cannot just be thoughts. Like when we say things like thoughts are things, nah, not really. It's a thing in that it's a 0 point electromagnetic field that exists within the subspace of the mind. Yeah, sure, it's a thing within that sense, but not a thing in the same sense that the speakers in your car are a thing, or that your car is a thing, or that your tablet is a thing, or your phone, so forth and so on. It is the feelings that are connected and processed of by those thoughts that become the thing. So you have to have a feeling that's held based on the thought in order for there to be a manifestation into the holographic universe or reality. I'll just say reality, right? So there has to be feelings associated. So in order for money to manifest, you have to attach a fear to it. I mean, not a feeling to it. And that feeling could be fear, that feeling could be excitement, that feeling can be love, whatever it is. But for it to appear in your reality, it's going to appear with a vibration because it's already been saturated by your feeling around it, which is what cause it to come forth. So the brain will only substantiate, or the brain will only make real or produce holograms with thought forms that have an emotion attached to it. Right? So even a belief, like a fear-based belief, is a feeling that's associated with a thought form. And it's your brain's job. It doesn't always do it well, though, depending on the level of development that a person has allowed themselves to go through. It is your brain's job to separate the illusion from the reality, right? So your brain understands like, yo, we have this what we call like the illusion of separation. The brain creates that, right? So, but it's nuanced. It's very tricky because sometimes we are separated from the idea that there are feelings attached to everything that we manifest. So we just say, oh, it is what it is. It's just the objective reality. But there's no such thing as objective reality, because in order for something to come into reality, we have to have a feeling attached to the thought that exists within the space of our mind. And once we have a feeling attached to that thought, then something is substantiated in the form of a hologram. So it could be a person, right? So we'll never come across a person that we don't have a feeling about. We will never come across anything that we don't have a feeling about, because the feeling is what allows us to actually come across it, right? So we can give substantiation to a thought form through a feeling of love based in truth. You know, we can give substantiation to a thought form with the feeling of fear, you know, or many different things, right? But there's an illusion oftentimes that we have, that we hold on to, and we don't use our brains to separate the illusion from the reality when it comes to money. This is when we start to kind of get into an issue, right? So here's one that we often have that's like really endemic to our minds, and it almost appears to it almost comes across like it's some sort of divine law, and that's that we need, quote unquote, money to survive, right? You know, you'll hear people say it a lot of times when you speak about living your purpose. Like, what do you want to do in life? What do you really want to do? I want to do this, but I got to work. I need money. What do you need money for? To live. That doesn't make sense. You need money to live. Like right now, if you filled your bathtub full of water and you ducked your head underneath, you know, when you started to run out of air, you wouldn't say, I need money right now. Say, I need to pick my head up. I need to breathe. In order for me to live, I need to breathe. Right? But we've established this feeling of illusion attached to money, that I needed to survive, I needed to live, and money creates freedom, right? So when we look at a term like financial freedom, oftentimes we don't recognize that financial freedom is not freedom. Freedom exists within the space, within inner space. What is inner space? Again, to reiterate what I said earlier, inner space is the mind. So you can have freedom of thought, you can have freedom of feelings, you can have freedom of images, you can have freedom even of electromagnetic actions that exist within the mind. The mind is where freedom is experienced, but financial freedom does not lead to mental freedom, right? So there are feelings that we attach to these thoughts surrounding money, whether it's a need, or sometimes we have this concept that our needs, where our needs become misplaced. Like, what do we really need, right? The truth is, we need other people more than we need money. As you've heard me teach before, and what I also have written within the Anu Way, which is an outline of our doctrine, is that, you know, economy is relationships. So you don't actually need money in order to have an economy. You need relationships. You know, so if I can relate to a person in a particular way, we could trade services, we could barter goods, or we could just have an agreement based on understanding the common needs or the common requirements for existence that we both have, right? Which is a love thing. That's a love thing, right? So we need people more than we need money. But when we have this concept that money leads to freedom, then our wages become our wages become a typification of slavery. You see, so our mind accepts a concept like wage slavery. You know, and it becomes very difficult to rebel against, or, you know, like you would overturn government. But it becomes very difficult to overturn those affirmations and those facts and those ideas that are held because we think we believe in them. We really do think we believe in them, and we don't understand that a belief only exists in one form, really. All beliefs are false. That's why sometimes you hear, like, you may have heard me on live segments before, and people have said, well, what do you believe in? I don't believe in anything, right? Because to believe is fear-based, right? So I don't operate out of fear. I operate out of knowing. I operate out of love. But, so if I say, like, I have a love-based belief as it relates to money, then I'm saying I have a fear as it relates to money. So if I do not know something or I have not gone through something, I can accept it on faith as being true. But the reality also is that most things that are accepted on faith can be undermined or replaced by beliefs if I have not experienced it in some form of integrated or direct way. And again, I want to remind, because I see people coming in again, this is not, anyone can share, any affirmation or knowing or even vulnerability that they may have discovered about themselves when it comes to trying to take on new belief patterns to give substance to their experience of money, right? So I wanted to lay the groundwork first to understand that there are patterns that are laid down, truthfully, even before we're birthed into the world. But there are patterns that are laid down as it relates to money, as it relates to fear, as it relates to love. And one of our jobs to do is to overrule or to overturn those principalities in high places, right? So what are the principalities or the principles that exist in high places? Those are the beliefs inside of our mind space that need to be replaced with active truth-based thoughts, right? That's the overturning. So yeah, man, I think it's a very tricky topic for a lot of people, to be honest with you, because again, there's that illusion of separation that the brain seeks to do. The brain is the realm of Eshu, and Eshu is the energy of segregation. So it says this thing is over here and that thing is over there. So when we try to even have a healthy relationship with money, we're a lot of times we're not focused on having a healthy relationship with our thoughts, right? So like if you think about the thought forms that come to mind when we think about money, there are people who will do things that we could consider to be criminally insane within the realm of human thinking. And they'll do it because of the thought forms that they have attached to money. So there is always the invisible attached to the visible, in all things. There's always the seen and there's the unseen. So it becomes very difficult at times because it might be nuanced, but if we really search ourselves, a lot of times we will see I have negative or very strong emotions as it relates to money, or I have a lot of fear-based beliefs when it comes to money. Like a belief like, it's going to be all right, the rent's going to get paid. That's fear-based. You're believing it. And sometimes because of the fear-based, we run from looking at certain economic models that will establish more healthy resources and relationships, and most importantly, get a connection to our source and a connection to who we really are, because our connection to who we are establishes our faith, and our faith then replaces the beliefs. So now we have a certain faith as it relates to the representation of money, or the representation that money is, right? So for each of us, money represents a different thing. And once you get that through your head, like money just represents something. But what does it represent? And if we asked the room, everybody would have a different answer. So that tells you right there, yeah, there is a thought that I have connected to this thing of money. It's not just a universal concept. It creates a separation because of all the rituals that are done by those who produce for the consumer. Like all of the shopping that we're told to do around the winter solstice, all of the shopping that we're told to do around the spring equinox. These are all actual. we're engaged in occult rituals, right? And there's nothing wrong with occultism, but if I'm engaged in a ritual, I don't necessarily want it to be hidden. The truth base of that ritual to be hidden from me. Tolerate it. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
Hmm.
When you were just saying we need money to survive, it made me think of the scripture. I think it's like Matthew 6:25 and something long. It's just a lot. But it speaks about considering the lilies of the field and birds of the air, how they have everything they need to survive because God provides for his own. So like you said, we can barter and have agreements with people, but we need people more than we need money. But I know for me, I've had um, fear-based thoughts around money, listening to how you're explaining it. Um, but there were also times I can remember that I would receive checks in the mail for just random amounts of money. So I don't remember what I was thinking during those times versus just regular times of just surviving instead of functioning from abundance.
Yeah, no doubt. I always hear about people. I've never received a random check. People, I always over the years, people always say, yeah, something happened. I'm so, especially because of the type of work that I do, the spiritual work. People have always gotten back, yeah, I received the money for this or old insurance check. I've never gotten anything like that, but I'm sure that must be a feeling. I found money in my pockets before, a coat or something I ain't wear in a long time. That's about it. But a lot of that also is a result of like how we perceive money entering into our reality. Again, the substantiation through feeling, right? But also, the sowing of money doesn't just come from earning money. Kind of like what you're saying in that sense, and that's sometimes part of the issue that where we're taught from the powers that be, if you will, or the strengths that be, that we don't understand the law, or we're not properly given the law of giving, right? And there are so many different ways to give, but I mean, it says it even in the scriptures, give and it shall be given unto you. So like that becomes a very basic and simple way of operation that lets me know that there is a statement of law that tells me that every thought and every action that I give will be exchanged or bartered back to me. So if I scheme to get something for nothing, ultimately that scheme will overtake me, as time goes on, because given it shall be given unto me. But if I give out of the abundance of my heart, the abundance of my heart, or the heart, represents the 0 point. It's a 0 point, just like I said, within the mind, there are 0 points of terrestrial electromagnetic points that now different possibilities can come forth from. The heart also has a 0 point inside of it that connects you to the source. So when the scripture says give from the abundance of your heart, it's saying give from what is the abundance of the heart. The abundance of the heart is the kingdom, or is the source of the most high. So if I'm giving from the 0 point, 0 point is infinite. If I'm giving from that 0 point inside it, whatever I'm giving, it could be time, it could be a hug, it could be walking down the street, just greeting someone because in that moment they're feeling invisible, and something says, say hello. Even if you don't say hello, even if if you're a person who would normally say peace or this or shalom or whatever, say hello to that person. Say good morning to that person. Don't say good rising, good dawning. Just say good morning to the person, whatever it is, right? And that could be your offering of your giving, but understanding that there are times when wealth will come to us, most times, and it doesn't come as a fact and point of what we earn, but a factor point of what we give. That's why you look at so many foundations, whether they're the ones from the Rockefellers or the Oppenheimers or, the Rothsteins, they give millions and millions upon millions of dollars annually to different causes. And I'm just laughing because, some would say, oh, because they're good, righteous people. Like, okay, um, or they understand this metaphysical science of money. The more I give, the more I get. This is how we stay wealthy. This is how we continue to produce generational wealth, because what I give today will be given to my children tomorrow. So definitely, good point, Sister Naya. Sister Kashi, I saw you came into the cipher. Feel free.
Yes, peace, everyone. So, money is a touchy, well, not touchy, just a difficult topic for me, because I am an old financial infant in it, and I do see and understand how, it's all about the thought, and just how something can be implanted a idea about the thought. You can be, trained and unlearned and taught better and more healthier ways of viewing and handling money. So yeah, this one is a very important topic, for me, because I'm one to say I don't really like to say I'm bad with money. Because I can be accountable for the things that I've done, but I can say that I've learned or am learning from, you know, um, foolishness. So give thanks.
You have it. You got it, Sequoia.
Thanks. Um, yeah, so money is a difficult one for me as well in terms of like I can recognize my thoughts in relation to money. Like there's different thoughts of like, can I, generate money? Can I, through my own efforts, through different relationships. And I definitely see like how relationships play a part because I've lived a life, in isolation, and as a result, you don't because you don't have that reflection of others, you don't really know what it is that you have to give, or you're not giving because you're isolated. So you don't see what it is, the value that you have to give. And so you don't give. And then it's like a cycle of, okay, I don't receive because I'm not giving, because I don't see the value that I have to give. So, yeah, I definitely see that separation. And then when I think about like, okay, we're taught to, go to school and then get a job, and those relationships that we, accumulate in the workforce are maybe just like colleagues that maybe we wouldn't be friends with outside of that environment. But like when I think about like becoming an entrepreneur and things like that, I think about like, okay, I have to get to know people. People have to know who I am. That's like one of the first things that I seen. Like, okay, no one knows who I am. So, um, yeah, so relationships definitely came up before like, okay, generating wealth. I was like, okay, people have to know me, so I have to get out of isolation. So I just wanted to share that.
You got it, Zach.
All right. When you just was talking to you, like people have to know me, it made me think of nepotism is what popped in my head, and just talking about relationships and having those different relationships can open up different doors for one to walk through. But going back to a little bit of what Chandler Joy was saying, even if there's no people there, then really who do you exchange the money with? And it started making me think of then money can be looked at almost in the sense of somebody sharing their energy. Like I produced this quote unquote banknote with my energy, so now I'm going to share it with you. And now you have the freedom to do whatever it is that you want with it, as opposed to like somebody giving you a gift card that has to be spent at a certain place. If you give them $25 in cash, well, now they can go spend it on whatever they want, like food or ice cream or crack or whatever it is that they want to buy. They're free to do that from having that note in their hand. But again, I would say too, though, then the relationships can get somebody to where they want to be, depending on who they know. Which then that's when people start to turn into even like just smooch, just trying to be things that they're not, to make friends, and not being genuine and coming from that heart space. Yeah. So
Go ahead, Shem. I was going to say something, but I saw you on mute.
No, it's okay. Go ahead, Chief. I'll wait.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the nepotism piece is actually important because, again, it speaks about relationship, right? So the concept there, nepotism is the root of that is where you get the word nephew. And actually nepotism, or nepotismo, is actually, it's not a bad thing. It's just the way that it's utilized, because originally it was a term that was applied to spiritual religious figures who were practicing some form of abstinence, right? So it was oftentimes applied to like the Pope. And a certain person would be considered the Pope's nephew, which was like the replacement for a son, because of course the Pope is not going to have children or whatever, right? So the concept there was that this particular individual is a part of a divine clan. So let's say if I'm the head of a divine clan, and a certain individual comes along who works their way up through the value in the ranks of that clan by showing that they are committed to it, then I would call them my nephew, which is like calling them my son, even though they're not my biological son, but we now recognize that we are of the same kin. So a lot of times, unfortunately, when we see nepotism now, it really is like, yeah, my sister's kid, my nephew, it's just, it's not really a earned kind of position. And it becomes a real sort of illegitimate and bastardized replacement for that divine rite of passage that was supposed to happen, which would allow someone to claim, yeah, that's my uncle, and that nephew space. So yeah, I just wanted to share that. You got it, Sham.
That makes sense, because there's a lot of abundance that comes with those relationships that you have. So that makes perfect sense. But I was going to make a note on, there's a clear distinction between giving from the heart space and giving to a homeless person and like taking a selfie with it. I was just thinking about that, how that kind of spirit of giving, I don't think is really highlighted currently. But I do think that very wealthy people, I know that very wealthy people know the science of giving. There's something else I was going to say, but I cannot remember.
It's cool. What you said was strong. Like the word you use, the science of giving, that's a key point, right? Because you won't get wealthy from affirmations. I have to say that to you. You can affirm for wealth, but it has to be accompanied by certain actions. But truth be told, and I know there's like millions and millions of affirmations around wealth, what you say when you get up in the morning and look in the mirror and, but it doesn't work that way because of what money actually is. And once, like I explained earlier, money is a substantiation of thought form. Then if I can't replace a thought form with a belief, it won't work, right? So I can replace a belief with another belief, but what happens is that when I'm replacing belief with belief, I still don't know, right? So not knowing makes me still susceptible, or makes me still vulnerable and open to the next new trend of beliefs and concepts that someone gives to me. So when I am holding a love-centered truth from my 0-point heart center, if I'm holding that truth from the heart, from the 0 point, the electromagnetic emission from my heart, as it relates to money, And now that experience, because I'm experiencing it directly, coming from my own 0 point heart, that's a knowing that won't be undermined by beliefs. You can't undermine a knowing with a belief. So the best way to replace those beliefs, which are fear based, reiterating, all beliefs are fear based, is to start to look at the patterns that have been kind of laid down to interrupt my love based truth that come from my 0 point heart. And like a simple way is speaking into the heart whenever I'm attaching myself to any kind of thought or experience related to money. And you could do that simply through breath. That's how it's a good way to remember. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, I'm going to my heart and I'm saluting it or making salat. And I'm asking for forgiveness for this thought and this concept. And when I'm breathing out, I'm saying thank you and I love you, right? Because love is the magnet. And I want to magnetize gratitude and wealth to me. That's what's so tricky. That's why Oshun is so important in this concept, or just the concept of Oshun and understanding what it is. Not serving her or it, because it's just a concept. It's not a person. And I know people take their religious dogma very seriously, but we're beyond that. The people who are here speaking. Now if that's something that you're still on, then you're still on. But it's like you have Hebrew Testament and Greek Testament. The Hebrew Testament was all about knowing, and the Greek Testament is all about religion. So that's why when Yahushua came forth in the Greek Testament, speaking to non-Hebrews, a lot of the conversation was, the law says this, or the elders said this, but verily I say unto you, which was increasing whatever was being said before, but now adding belief on top of it, because now I have to try to slowly replace your beliefs with a better belief and then lead you slowly into a transformed mind, into faith. Right. So I give you a shortcut, just don't use affirmations to try to replace beliefs, because beliefs can be swapped out all day, every day. It's the truth that we run from that implants itself and can't be, flipped over by belief. I think Brother Zach, you were going to say something, if I'm not mistaken. Or Sister Deidre, I seen you come in too.
Peace, peace to everyone.
Peace.
I have two things I wanted to say. One was related to part of the conversation earlier about, who we're going to spend the money with. And it really brought me back to, I think it was a cipher we had like a while ago, and breaking down the word fellowship and how like that F-E in the beginning is like the root word of fee. So there's an implication to like money. And the fee is that loving union that we engage with in others. And in order to do that, like we always negate from what we are. And so as Brother Zach was talking about like that energy exchange, it made me think of that. So it's like the fee is the actual camaraderie. And we know that, there are some people that don't want to pay the fee for brotherhood or sisterhood. So, they come with agendas. So we know that we have to be like wary of them. But I just wanted to share that and kind of bring that back up. And I thought it was interesting how it's like full circle, because I think this conversation was like June 2020 sometime. And I just thought that was really interesting. The other part, as you were speaking, Chief, about the love-based truth from the 0 point heart, I immediately like pictured an anchor. And like when I think of an anchor, it's like, it's attached to a chain. And, it kind of, falls down to the sea floor to like hold the ship in place. But also something that anchors, you could think of like a grappling hook, something that comes from above and that you kind of hang on. And so that made me think of Obatila's chain and how, we have to keep hold of it or jump hold of it. And so I was like, what removes us from that chain is the fear that you were talking about. So we have to stay anchored to that chain and really work to not let fear kind of move us off of that, so we can stay connected to the Most High and to the heavens.
No doubt. I mean, you're absolutely right. There is like a different, there's a chain that establishes a different way of thinking, which now becomes like essential in our spiritual demonstration, right? And that spiritual, because when you climb in or you're holding onto that chain, you're seen, and there's a there's a disappointment sometimes that's seen before you establish, if you do things without establishing the connection to the chain, right? Sometimes there's a disappointment that comes with success because there's no love. Connecting and magnetizing yourself to the chain is an act of love, and that love begins to permeate and saturate whatever it is that your initiatives are in life, or whatever it is that you're longing for in life, and it starts to become the motivation. It kind of goes back to what Zach was saying, like, I can give you this money, but you might go do this with it, or you might go do that with it. But I'm successful if I'm doing what I did, and like what you said, from that 0 point. If I'm doing it from the 0 point, then my a selfish thought won't be crowded out. Love will crowd out the selfish thought. The selfishness will be overcome, and, oh, you're just going to do this, or you're going to do that. And in truth, what also happens is that fear is cast out. So a lot of times it's like, Sister Kashia said, and other people have said, they have this certain relationship with money, but it's important when we're talking about, again, the chain. What you have a relationship with is fear-based thoughts, fear-based beliefs, and that then permeates your connection to money, right? And you can substantiate something through different feelings. So you can choose to create through fear, or you can choose to create through love. Like it's up to you. Either one, right? But the difference is that one is going to leave you with a greater sense of achievement, and the other one is going to leave you with a greater sense of disappointment, because you're not really producing your capital from unseen and unknown divine sources, but you're really producing and just opening up kind of like a commercial avenue in your brain, or in your mind. Remember, the mind is just the space where, like, they have like games. It was like Sim City or something like that, where you could build like different cities, I guess. Farm. You said it's a farm or something?
Yeah. You can build anything.
Right. Okay. So you could build anything, or like how we have Meta, or the metaverse is coming. These are all technical emulations of the mind. It's just, new people always try to recreate the divine technology with their new world temporary technology. And, as we're speaking about money and things like that, it's all technology. Like, everything you do is really technology. The way you mate, there's technology to that. Who you choose to mate with, right? Because you're looking for certain hardware, you're looking for certain software, and how certain software interacts with certain hardware. So when we're looking at the representation of money, the money is the hardware, but what's the software that drives that hardware of money? Is the software fear-based? Is it because I feel I need to survive, and so forth and so on, which of course will magnetize money to me with that vibration on it? Or is the software love and truth-based, which will magnetize money with that particular vibration on it? That's the amazing thing about wealth, is that how it exchanges hands, right? And even though we may live in a time now where the beast says, all right, we got to get rid of all these coins, and we got to get rid of, money is made out of silk. We got to get rid of all this silk, this 10-inch silk that everybody's holding, and these different nickel coins and copper plated coins and zinc and all of these metals that they have that holds the vibrations. You might have a silver dollar. The silver dollar holds a vibration of all the hands that it's exchanged to. So you've magnetized that silver dollar, but did it come from people who were fearful, or did it come from people who were truth-based, and love-based in that sense, and we have the option always to choose the thought form of our source in order to increase, which is a unceasing and unfailing substance, but it is the thought of the Most High which will constitute the difference between just giving, right? Or giving with the purpose of increase because we're manifesting certain things in the realm of things. You know, we're linking a divine concept on heaven to earth, right? This was really supposed to be the science of tithing, but people figured out like we can obligate people to pretty much give us subscription payments, you know, if we work this tithing a way that we want to do. But tithing was really, it was more about bringing the consciousness of divine order and having it manifest in our outer life and creating a greater efficiency and a greater prosperity within the life by using this form of ritualistic tithing, which wasn't necessarily money based either. You know, it was really what I take off of the corners of my farm, really, or of my acreage. But I don't want to get off into all of that. All right, so yeah. Anyone else feel to share? You know, go ahead and share. I know it's also like a scary subject too, man, because it's like, I'm sure some people are embarrassed, you know, like if you may not have had truth-based love thoughts as it pertains to money, and you thinking because you don't have money, you have a bad relationship with money. That's not necessarily the case, but I know it may be a little embarrassing too. So, you know, I honor your potential embarrassment, you know.
I remember you had spoke about Oshun and the religious dogma. I don't know about you, but Oshun had came to me in a dream last night, and it
So
felt so
good.
good.
You had to be there. That's old school. You had to be there.
Man, when Sister Deidre was talking a little bit about that chain, and it made me think of like some things that even stories that are used to prevent sometimes people from having the relationship with money and wanting to maybe acquire it is even in that story with the rich man who was going to get in heaven and was asking, well, what do I need to do? I've done this, I've done that, and I've done this. And he was like, all right, well, you know, leave your riches and come with me. He's like, screw that. And one can look at that and be like, you see, this is what happens when you have money. And when you have money, and the rich people are not going to get in heaven, or rich people, you know, if you have a lot of money, then you're going to be cursed or what have you. Which then all of a sudden is like, all right, well, I don't want to be that person, and for me not to be that person, then I'm going to accept, quote, I'm putting air quotes on it, poverty, right? Or I'll accept whatever position I am, but I don't want to go after it. And sometimes some people would look at that and were like, well, you know, this is all just a game of manipulation, and see, we're trying to manipulate you, not wanting money and ultimately accepting your position in life as opposed to, you know, figuring out how to acquire it. And even one more thing, and then even when you speaking of tithing, which it made me think of, I mean, I would understand why somebody would charge somebody, because people take advantage of those who actually are up there pouring and giving into somebody, and they're like, okay, well, you know, reciprocity. And no, I'm not. I just want this person. They should have a job like I should have a job, but then they should keep pouring into me every time I have a problem, or every time I want to fill up. I'm gonna show up here, or even like in coaching, and well, just give me some advice, or let me send something in your inbox and answer this question for me, as opposed to respecting somebody's time and energy that they put into acquiring the information in order to pour into them. So, I mean, I guess on one end, I'm like, nah, people, if you don't want to disrespect it, then yeah, you're going to just, this is what it is. Give 10% food. Yeah.
Peace, peace, Chief, peace, everyone. Yeah, I just wanted to share.
Peace.
Yeah, I just wanted to share, I don't always have truth-based love thoughts as it relates to money. I do carry a lot of fear. Emma Sequoia had mentioned, entrepreneurialism and, being able to generate money. And those are some things that I'm facing, you know, as I learn, entrepreneurialism and business. And I'm finding that I'm doing a lot of things by myself and needing to form relationships with others as it relates to outsourcing. And so, my fear comes because that's even more money that I need to generate, to pay others to do certain things. And then I also think, well, then that means I need, more business to come in. So, and my fears: am I going to be able to maintain this? Am I going to be able to generate, money to pay others, to pay myself, and any other things that are needed as it pertains to business and entrepreneurship. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
I was oh, go ahead, Sister
You know,
Deidre.
oh, so sorry, real quick. You know what? I was when I hear that phrase, like about the rich man getting into heaven. I've always like, well, it says rich, not wealthy, and maybe there's a difference, because the other thing is like, isn't the rich part relative, and we're also talking about like being anchored to the love based truth. So it that to me also is like your relationship with money, or with yeah, with money, because something that someone will call riches, another person may not. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I was gonna share. I was looking into like what money is, and I was looking into Bitcoin, and then I was looking at something where it said like that technology, the Bitcoin technology, is moving towards like being more valuable than gold, and I was like, oh wow, but that's because like the collective people are that they're finding value in it. Whereas, like, gold is not we don't trade gold anymore as a form of like currency. It's becoming something different because of the blockchain, technology. And I just thought about like how, like, if the general consensus of what, people value in relation to money, like how that becomes the new way of doing things. So it just makes me think about like relationships, once again, like even collective economics, and even in our community, you know, a lot of times like people, like I hear a lot of situations where businesses will go, sour because the relationship went sour, and things like that. So, being able to connect on what people value, and to be able to make that strong so that you can generate wealth and, things of that nature. But that's just what came to my mind. So just wanted to share.
Yeah, I agree, Mr. Koy. That collective nature that needs to be rooted in truth, though. Like I think of you can. I'm not even just thinking about giving money or giving favors or whatever. What if you like how you give yourself? Like, are you speaking to someone from that heart space? I think is also related to wealth. And as we were talking about, you know, giving from that space, I'm thinking of a cousin of mine who he charges you for everything. Like I go over to his house, if I if I eat with like a plastic fork, he's like, that's gonna be $1. And I'm thinking like the most stingy people always are asking for money. He's always asking for money, but at this time, wouldn't you be rich from all the dollar forks you've been charging for? So that just came to mind as we're speaking about being giving from that heart space.
Yeah, that's so true, and that's so funny. I had a sister like that. She was always asking like, "Okay, what you gonna give me? You got something for me?" It's like, oh my goodness, like it's like you can't just do something from your heart. You gotta ask for something in return. Like, so then it just makes the whole experience like, inauthentic, but
Yeah.
That's a old thing. People being given a certain promise. Again, given it should be given unto you. And instead of respecting the promise, they give and they say, all right, what you gonna give me? Right? So they're kind of rushing the clock. And you have again so many different examples of that through different writings, through different scriptures, where there was a promise that was given and the person like doesn't have trust, and doesn't imagine that there is a law of compensation that exists within the universe. And that law of compensation will assure that whatever I'm giving for my 0 point heart reality is going to be given back unto me, even that miserly kind of energy. If I go out like that and I'm a miser towards everyone, then the universe will treat me in a miserly fashion and will return things back to me in crumbs and in small drips because I've put that out. So even though, yeah, I'm charging $1 for a plastic fork or whatever, I never have anything because that's exactly how I'm being treated. Whatever breath I send out is the breath I get. Right. So if I send out stinginess, I breathe in stinginess. I can't treat the universe as this toxic dump that's going to filter through everything and then give me back good things. It's actually the brain that is supposed to be your filtering point. So the brain is really where the alchemy occurs. I receive something like just like your cousin, all right, $1 for the spoon or the fork, whatever. You shouldn't be eating with plastic anyway. So I'm kind of glad he's
Stop
charging you $1.
that.
You know what I'm saying? Eat with your hands anyway. Most things you can eat
True.
with your hands anyway. You know what I mean? But the thing about it is but you turn it into alchemy by turning it into a lesson. You know what I mean? So, and you're doing that through your higher order thinking, which again was like the difference between the Hebrew Testament and the Greek Testament, where the Greek Testament now says, all right, let's deal with the mind, whereas the Hebrew Testament deals with more exchange. Do this happens. Do this, you get that. Don't do that, you get that. It's all about reciprocity and equal exchange. And then the Greek Testament comes along and says, all right, now let's deal with this other science of you might do this or give this, and this will come out of right field. This other thing that you weren't even expecting because of the way your mind is transforming. So it's really speaking about that turning water into wine. It's speaking about now let's talk about alchemy. So that's really, even in situations like that, you could look at it, be like, that's why you never have any money, because of the thoughts that you have attached to money. And because of those thoughts, now you're substantiating a certain reality where your money is maybe it's blowing away in the wind. There's different kind of representations. Like I said, money is a representation, and there are when we represent something, let's say through image, there is a defined and clear image and representation that we can have, or we can have a poor representation. If money is supposed to represent abundance and accessibility and these things in an infinite and eternal sort of amount, and it's not representing that, it's because of the concept that we hold inside, that it's not infinite, it's not eternal. It's not like, yo, yeah, it's a plastic spoon or a fork, but truth be told, next time I walk past a Whole Foods, I could just grab a handful of them. Or any supermarket, just go to the deli section and just grab a bunch of forks. Like, I can always get forks and spoons. Like, that's easy. But if my thinking isn't that, and my thinking is that it's this thing that I'm using to represent the acquisition of wealth is not a thing that comes in abundance, then it will not spill back into me, into my reality abundantly, because I'm now substantiating this substance, this thought form, or this holograph is coming as a result of fear and not as a result of truth.
That just was making me think of how much then one would like be like the balance of one protecting themselves, as far as if one could start to take advantage of somebody, just like you said, if going over your cousin's house, you charge for the spoon or fork. And maybe at some point, it's like, hold on, man, everybody just keeps coming over here eating and eating, and they're not giving back. They're not buying any food. They're not bringing anything else other than, not even the plate or the fork. So guess what? Now I'm going to just start charging. And then now when somebody starts charging, it's like, oh, man, you trying to charge me. You trying to, like, how much of that then is, would you say, Sham, is like him protecting himself as opposed to coming from a fear base?
I think that's still fear though, because like, what about me? What about me? But
Mhm.
but half the time, most of the time, actually, most people are helping him. But because he's always in that fear base, like, what about me? Like, he's never gonna get his. He doesn't see it. If that makes sense.
Nah, got it. Thank you kindly. Thank you kindly.
And I think that's a great point that you brought up, Sham, like the what about me mentality. And, it's just always important to recognize that money is nothing but a totem. So if we are really doing the E5, we're really going beneath the surface, we're looking at, well, what does this totem represent? And sometimes we just look in the wrong places to do that. Like, if people are always coming to my house to eat, that means I have fellowship. Now, of course, fellowship is, like, yeah, when I talked before, the root is fee, fellow. The root of fellow is fee. So it's money. So fellowship within itself means a partnership of money. So it means that we all are looking at this representation of this thing in the same way. Right. So if I come over and I eat, that's why it's not good to eat with everyone. And we're not really in fellowship, then what exactly is it that I'm taking in? What exactly is it? Because I'm now eating amongst possible enemies, or thinking that I have this illusion of fellowship. But really what's happening is that the people around me have separated our relationship from our money activities. And there really should never be a separation. That's why simple things like where you buy things, like how are you treated? I'm sure many have maybe gone into a space and they weren't treated properly and they left because they recognize that there is I'm going to spend my money elsewhere. This person doesn't deserve my money because they recognize their money is a show of goodwill. So having plastic forks or whatever is a show of goodwill. How many people live by themselves but buy, two or three bedroom homes or get 2 or 3 bedroom apartments because in case someone wants to stay over, I want to have a guest room. So there's immediately there's a thought attached of giving to this thing that I've just acquired. So what happens? Things are given unto them. Or I can get a small plate. I just need something for myself. Like Sham said, what about me? And I don't need chairs or anything, or I just need one bowl, one spoon. And then those are the same people who come to me for sessions all the time talking about how lonely they are. Because what are you sewing in to your reality? So that fellowship piece is really key. That was just brought up.
I thought about when you said having extra rooms in your house for guests just in case. And when I was going through the process of buying my house, I was looking for a 4 bedroom house because in my mind I was like, oh, me and each child needs their own room. And people were like, well, no, you got to get a guest bedroom or what was that, bonus room. I'm like, well, who gonna pay for that room? Because that's not what I'm calculating working into my budget as I'm trying to buy this. But listening, it's like I'm thinking about how those people, of course, Western civilization, just being in the world, not having culture, how they put their thoughts on you. And if you don't have anything to stand firm in or attach yourself to, you can listen to them and get yourself in more trouble.
Sounds like you were a victim of someone else's thoughts.
No, I stuck to what I was going to do and got what I said I was going to get. Even in that, not knowing I shouldn't have done that. I should have just stuck to what was really, really feasible instead of thinking okay, this child needs this room, this child needs that room. Because I wasn't already living like that. I was living in a 2-bedroom space. So it was working. I could have continued to do that.
Why didn't you?
Because in my mind, not knowing no better, I really wanted each child to have their own room so I could decorate it and they would just have their own space.
I ain't gonna get into one of them Naya circles, but okay, all right. I know how this goes. Yeah, I seen this movie. Before. I know how this ends. I'm good. Yeah, I'm gonna go get some popcorn.
Peace. This is so much like a if you build it, they will come. It's like go into it with giving, and it shouldn't be like I'm gonna give this because I know I'm gonna get this in return. Like what you'll receive shouldn't even be part of the thought. It should be what you can actually put out.
Agreed.
Go ahead, Zach.
Okay. Even in the sense, though, of just going back to what Naya has said about culture, and me thinking of a comment that I think it was Muhammad Ali. He was like, "Why would I spend money with somebody who doesn't want me there?" But even in the sense of making one think or feel or coming from a deficit of, if I can't eat at a certain restaurant, kind of what you said, you want to spend your money with somebody, or if I can't purchase at a certain store or have a certain brand on me, then, there's something that must be wrong. And even though that I'm treated any kind of way when I walk into these establishments, or even though I see certain people who, I didn't get a glass of champagne when I walked in, and I feel slighted because I spend a lot of money here. And it's like, who has infiltrated your mind to think that you need to go into one of these spots, I guess, to spend or to give your resources to somebody who could care less about you, who could care less about any kind of community that you came from? And not necessarily saying that they have to, but it's like, when does one finally say, you know what, let me start to cultivate some healthier relationships with something that I'm really about, a cause that I'm really for, as opposed to just spending my money with somebody else to try to make me feel like I'm part of an elite system or part of an elite group, when ultimately I'm really not.
That's like another very nuanced concept and a degree that I think a lot of people may struggle with in some ways, right? Because there's like a fine line between stewardship, right, and being able to understand the movement of the divine order, right? So if we're moving from a divine consciousness, right, if we're moving from a heavenly or celestial consciousness, then we'll immediately understand that there's balance in everything, right? And the way that we spin, or the way that we embrace health, the way that we embrace prosperity, and any sort of life and substance is a reflection of divine order, right? So within that divine order, there is this concept of stewardship. So even the Most High, the Creator, serves as a steward over the Creator's inexhaustible supplies. You just don't get everything. Everything isn't just given to anybody. So in the same reflection, like, we have to kind of mirror that divine order and see ourselves as like setting certain mental forces or mental actions rather, and spiritual forces into movement through the way that we are in our giving and the way that we are in our spending. That's what it says, like, Yah loves the Elohim love a cheerful giver, but the reason is because the cheerfulness is a sign of an open flow, and when I'm cheerful, it's just like going to a comedy club. My walls are down, so I'm open to the purity of the flow that will come in or come out, but that coming in and coming out is the substance that balances all things in being. You know, so when I'm reflecting that in my giving, I'm cheerful about it. Like the cousin who gives the plastic fork, but he's like, oh man, take as many as you want. It's cool. Like boom, 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 boom. You know, like he's giving them cheerfully. He now is receptive to what comes back, because now the other cousin may come back the next time and be like, you know what, forget these plastic forks. Here, I got some, because I come here every 7 days, I'm going to bring you 5 metal forks, and I'll take a couple with me every time. I wash the ones that we have. I'll bring them home, wash them, whatever. I don't know. It's a dumb example, but the point is that I'm now open to the balance of that divine order. So it's like a very careful nuance, and you know, like even when you're giving, there's only one way to give, and it's free, like to freely give something, you know, because anything outside of that, you're just bribing the person. You know, if I'm giving you something with the reservation of something in return, it's a bribe, right? So to freely give without any kind of pretension or any sort of like suggestion of that it's a loan, or I want to be congratulate me. You know what I mean? Like I give a tip to a waitress or a waiter, and they're like, "Oh, thanks." And I'm like, "Oh, wait, come back. I just gave you $20. You know, I gave you $100 tip. Like, that's all you gonna say? You know?" So now it's a bribe. You know, so it's a very fine line. And when we start to understand that the generosity and the cheerfulness is actually it's a divine concept, generosity becomes a virtue, if you will, in that sense.
Okay, how if you go out, I guess maybe that is a bribe. I'm just thinking about if somebody goes on a date and, like, you know, if I paid for the meal, the least you can do is say thank you. I mean, yo, what is what is going on if you just come to expect something and you're like, oh man, that's very selfish of you to want somebody to say, nah, man, like, yo. Your time, I mean, I can say, yes, about the relationship and the time that somebody spent. But
yeah, but you know what? Maybe they didn't say thank you, not because they didn't appreciate it. Maybe they were dumbfounded. You know, maybe this person you went on a date. I mean, if that's, first of all, that's whack anyway. But all right, you want a date? You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to work with this example, but I don't date, so I'm trying to. I don't know, but yeah, I'm going for the ride here. You know what I mean? So if I go on a date with some, hey, you want to go to the Doobie Brothers concert? You know, I heard they're in town. You know, and then we go to dinner afterwards. You know, whatever. The bottom line is that if I can't even get it out my mouth. If I'm paying for dinner, why would I pay for dinner? Like, I don't know. All right, but let's just say if I pay for dinner, my heart's all beating hard. I'm just saying it like that didn't sit well in my body. but I'm paying for dinner and I'm expecting a thank you. That female, she may have expected to pay because maybe most guys don't pay. Maybe she runs into guys like me. Like, I'm the prize. You ain't the prize. You better break open that purse. Maybe she, you know. So he's like, oh, you actually gonna pay. You know, but there could be 1,000,001 different reasons. And then it's understanding the energy, right? But also there's lessons in that. You know, I was with a sister years ago. I had to not be with her anymore. And she never said please or thank you, ever. You know, she never asked for things. Like, I remember one time we were somewhere and I was just watching her and we were around other women and we were working on something. And every time she wanted something, instead of saying, could you pass me that? She would just hold her hand towards the thing that she wanted, for the sister to put it in her hand and pass it over to her, right? And these things may seem subtle in the moment and people may not notice it, you know, but I looked at certain patterns. Like, yeah, this person doesn't say thank you. And it's one of those type of people that whenever you call them out on it, is, you know, I said thank you. I said thank you. You know, people always lie about that when they don't say thank you because they don't realize sometimes you're watching them. No, you didn't say thank you. I was watching and waiting. I've been watching you for a year now. You don't say thank you, you know.
Right.
But a lot of times you have to, for me, I would choose gratitude. If I take someone out, I pay, they don't say thank you, whatever. Thank you. Thank you to the Most High. Because I had eyes to see. So now I know why the stakes are low. All right, what I pay for dinner, a little $150, $200, whatever. But now the stakes are low, and I recognize, like, yeah, this person is not, where I want to implant myself. So that's understanding the returning of a blessing. You know what I mean? It doesn't always come like, here's the fork, give me the dollar. It may come as like, here's the dinner, give me the lesson. That may be a part of it. There was a young brother whose family I used to work with, right? As a spiritual guide. And he was sharing about a date he went on with a young lady. And he took her to a nice restaurant, whatever, whoop-de-whoop, right? And he ordered some Merlot. And when the wine comes, she asked for sugar packets. And she put sugar in the wine. And as she's looking at him like, yeah, I like my wine sweet.
What?
Right.
What?
Get a little honey in there too, why not?
Right, exactly. Y'all got any Kool-Aid packets? Mix them together. I want 3 colors.
Let's have a drink.
So
No, who else is making
right,
lemonade?
exactly.
Oh my goodness.
So this is what I'm saying. So he comes to me and he's like, yo, what do I do with that? And I'm like, well, how do you feel about it? Was that acceptable behavior? He was like, nah. It was like, yo, you know how much money I paid for that one? Like, yo, I was really trying to do something. I was like, well, you that lesson, you got a lesson here. Now you know what you're dealing with. So I think there's different ways that that lessons could come. I remember I had a situation like that once with some wine, and it was a group of us. We was out, and a good brother of mine had a woman with him he was dating. I was solo, and she ordered some wine and was like, "Yo, we need more grapes." And I just looked at him like, "Yo, you better walk her away from the table. Go have a talk with her." Because it was crazy because it was like a high powered kind of meeting. And I was like, first of all, you shouldn't even brought her. You was trying to get props off of this quote unquote attractive female, but then she sits there and says her wine needs more grapes. So
What?
See, this is why I don't go out on dates. I go by myself. I treat myself to a nice dinner, So yeah, but there's a lesson in that. I think we have to be able to look at the exchanges and not always it's got to come like this or it's got to come like that. If we recognize that we're always in partnership with the Most High, always, then we'll recognize that how we conduct our financial going-ons or affairs, if you will, if it's with the thought of the Most High, it'll always be valid. And it works. It's a formula that works every single time. And we can use that in obviously all areas of our life, right? So even if we're picking a mate, like, hey, I'm going to go to this dinner, it's a meeting, it's at a nice restaurant, who should I bring? Well, ask the Most High. That's your partner. That's your first business partner. Don't bring the woman who says she needs more grapes, and her wine. Don't bring the one who pours splendid packets into the Merlot. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Partnership.
Yeah. Hey, I was saying date as in just the time and place. I didn't mean anything.
Yeah, right. But then how would you pay for the time and date, brother?
No, just the time that somebody was going to actually be there. So, what's the date? January 7th.
You said if I pay for the date, so that sounds like an escort. So you got to pay. You got to pay, brother. You got to pay first. In fact, Purse first.
That's
As
a deposit.
you leasing it for an hour. That's different.
But it just made me think of when you was speaking on, it may not come back. It just made me think, how much one is conditioned for when spending money. You think that if, it's a medium of exchange. So if I pay for this, I'm expecting this back, right? So even if I go on a date, if I start paying for this, I'm expecting something back, which ultimately missing kind of what you speak, what I thought when you were speaking about missing one's blessing in what they actually are getting back and missing the lesson of which one could get back because they're not getting what they thought they should get for that medium of exchange of that money that they just spent. So, even in a sense, it made me think of, there's this line, I think there was, sometimes people say that, I prayed for courage and then God gave me a problem or something, like things that I had to go through. I prayed for love, but ultimately there were some issues that came along that make me see or make me think that it's not always going to look the way that I think it's going to look. But ultimately, what is the lesson of what I just got that is going to ultimately get me to where one needs to be?
All right, cool. So we at the half hour mark or the hour and a half hour mark. I'm gonna close it down unless someone else has more that they would like to share or explore. And of course, the replay is always on. So there was a lot of concepts that were shared in the very beginning. As it relates to mind space and what we could call stages of creation when it comes to creating the hologram of money, and within that mind space. And so it's just good to remember, like, those stages of creation. It begins with light, and light is a manifestation of bringing forth an abundant supply, right? It's how much light is there? A bunch. Let there be light. So in order for us to substantiate anything and bring anything into the holographic universe, we must have a clear perception of the proposition, and that clarity is what allows us to kind of discern, rely on, and see that our reliance, I should say, should be on the light and not so much on the material things. See, that's the science of, like, the rich man has trouble getting into heaven because, and it's not really just for rich people. It's rich and poor people, right? Rich and poor people often hold the mind or the thought that they need money to survive. They need money to have what it is that they want to experience in life, and not understanding that light is an intelligence, and it's a quality of spirit, and things begin there. That precedes all activity, or that precedes all manifestation. So if I'm tied into that, then I can move on to creating or developing, let's say, a faith or a firmament. Right? What is a firmament? And we're just going through, like, the creation in Genesis. It tells you so much. That's why when I taught that, I said, if you just study this, like, first line, you learn everything you need to learn basically to live in life, right? But the firmament is firm, right? So establishing a firm place within the space of mind. The mind is a space-time continuum, but that firmness of that particular place allows me to divide what is true from what is apparent, and we do this through being able to affirm certain things. This is what we call our faith. It's a faculty inside of us. And of course that was called the firmament, in the act of creation, if you will. And then there has to be imagination, right? Because it's through the imagination that, the dry land, if you will appear. Right. We've already gone through the process of creating a clear mental image and placing that mental image on firmament or firm mind. And now we manifest through our imagination, which is, bringing forth what we desire, you know, but it's not the imagination per se that will cause the manifestation. That's why just this whole, like, I know a lot of times in the culture community, people imagine themselves to be things that they're nowhere near. You know, I'm queen this, I'm king that, I'm that, right. You know, imagining yourself and putting on your costume and playing dress up doesn't actually manifest anything. It only will produce a mental image, which you would like to have, you know, manifested. But in the process of manifestation, imagination just kind of performs that step of determining what the form of something's going to be versus the desired good of that particular thing, right? And that's just 3 steps. There's way more steps to like bringing something into fruition. And one of the things that you'll see, again, if you go back to Genesis, and there's a series I taught on that, is that each one, from light to faith to imagination, and then to understanding like even will, where we get the concept of I am. You know, that will is the I am of the sun, and the moon is the intellect, right? And there's a separation between those two sort of lights. So when we're saying let there be light, there's a greater light and there's a lesser light. The greater light is the mind, and the lesser light is the will. You know, so we start to understand that all these different things, all these different processes are connected to the bringing forth of love and truth-based money. You see, and that's what magnetizes that proper vibration of money to us, as opposed to a fear-based belief in money. And again, to reiterate, any belief is fear-based. So any belief you have it, money, I believe money is good. That's fear is telling you that. I believe money is from God. Fear is telling you that. You see, any belief that you hold around money is based around fear. Right? So maybe one day I'll like really walk you through those different steps, you know, of understanding the will of creation, and even like how creation goes through a process of segregation or discrimination, if you will, in order to establish divine judgment of, you know, so this has to go there. There's a perception of spiritual understanding, as opposed to our own internal faculties, and that's connected to money and the judgment, you know, being able to judge. And then there's also wisdom. There's also love, you know, which is the expressive side of us being something. You know, the love is that female side, which is the receptive side, you know, of our being, right? You know, so, and then of course there's always the Sabbath, right? But we'll get into that some other time. But yeah, I just wanted to thank you all, you know, for coming through. And yeah, any our new people, if you want to, like, if we got any things you want to share with the folk before we close out, or if you want to keep it going, feel free.
Mic drop. I was today years old when I just realized what firmament meant. Well, what you just said, Chief, because I think it's been a whole year we've been trying to break down Genesis. So thanks.
Oh, no problem. No problem at all. Yeah. Firmament.
Absolutely. Give thanks for this one. Because me and money, it's been a conundrum, man.
Oh, you hear that, Precious?
Yeah, learned that last night.
Spell it.
Conundrum. I don't do that.
Sister, give me them 2 claps so we get up out of here.
Don't do it. He act like he didn't hear you, Shaman. He heard you.
What'd she say?
She said, spell it.
Oh, okay. Google. Activate. Hey man, you're making me think a lot. Hey, I'm feeling attacked. I'm out of here.
Yeah. Ooh. Ain't that one. I'm feeling attacked. Y'all making me think. Y'all making me look at my life. I'm out of here.
Yeah,
I didn't come here for that.
Easiest way to get out of anything is be a victim.
Yeah. Oh, stop picking on Naya.
I ain't say nothing. Not nothing.
That's what I'm saying. He just over there calling you out and stuff. That ain't right. That ain't right.
I'm used
You
to
know what I mean? Yeah, used to. Yeah, the victim. Yeah, used to being victimized. Huh? Right back where we started. So yeah, but you know, but yeah, if anyone wants to share any Anu stuff, feel free before we, lead the people be. You know.
Oh, don't forget about the Anu Youth Initiative, everyone. If you have youth, we have an initiative going on beginning late spring, I believe. But you can go to anulifeglobal.org to register. And it's a really exciting curriculum teaching about their origins and, economic growth patterns. Actually, what we spoke about today, but in a form for children. So make sure to register.
And if you are looking forward to joining Anu or being interested in sponsored by a member, you can go to www.anulifeglobal.org/join.
Give thanks, and follow Our New Life Global on all social media platforms. Give thanks. This was a really good topic. It was an important one. I'm one of those people that's embarrassed, so I don't have much to say, but just give thanks.
Oh, don't be embarrassed for sure. Go ahead, Shamanique. I heard you about to say something. Go on and confess. Unburden yourself.
You aren't the only one. It was okay. It's okay.
Yay.
Mm-hmm.
I just was going to say a great show to listen to is the self-centered of, what's the difference of selfish and self-absorbed, and seeing what one has anchored themselves to, which would be a great follow-up if anybody wanted to go check that out on Enlightenment and Transformation.
Yeah, good looking out. Yeah. Yeah, man. So, just stay plugged in. Tell a friend to tell a friend. The club, I guess they call them clubs here, right? It's growing, which I guess is I guess it's a good thing. We're getting new people all the time, and kind of the topics that we're kind of pivoting on, I think are a little lighter. It's kind of like the command of days, but they are necessary, or helpful, I should say. There's different levels of teaching, and I know there are folks sometimes that still hit me like, yo, but I want that metaphysics, and when you're teaching the occult and all, that's cool, but there's levels, and a part of your love and your offering is to make sure that people can access things at different levels, just like wealth. You got small bills, you got big bills, and everybody can't make change for 100, so it's important to be able to give those different levels of consciousness and recognize that they're all unified, and when you become someone who has mastered your ideas, you can bring them forth in a creative way, where everyone can get a little something out of it. And I'll just add too, because we're coming off of our Sabbath before we close out. The Sabbath is important for creativity, man. In order to realize the fulfillment of what you've assured, that you've expressed, you have that Sabbath. And I want to be clear on something too, man. A Sabbath is not just one day every seven cycles. A Sabbath could just be a moment. Like sometimes you just take a moment and, you might exhale and just kind of maybe collect yourself. Some of us sometimes do that when we're driving home, and you pull into your space. It could be your driveway, your yard, or in front of your home, or wherever you park. And you just take a moment to like, oh, okay. And you kind of collect yourself. That is that inner quiet and that stillness, and that giving yourself time to resupply yourself with creative energy, and to take time out from constantly expending energy, it's critical to understanding everything that's been taught about, man. So I just want to kind of put that out there. For those of you who don't observe the Sabbath, think about it. Try it. Try it. Give yourself a month where you say, hey, I'm going to do this Anu thing with them. And on Fridays at sundown, I'm shutting it down. And then I'm not, going to reactivate, if you will, into Saturday. at sundown. And, you know, just kind of see how it starts to maybe bring certain increase in your life. All right. With that said, I'm going to close out the room. Everyone, be well today. Be safe. All right. And we'll see you again soon enough. Peace.
Peace.
Thanks. Peace, everyone.